We've been talking up to this point about philosophy and literature, or philosophical ideas about literature. Let's move on now to philosophy in literature. Let me say what I mean by that. First of all, there have been some famous philosophers, or thinkers very like philosophers, like Voltaire, who've also been major novelists. I mean, not only Voltaire, but Rousseau, in our own time, Jean-Paul Sartre. Or among simply famous novelists, there are some who've been obviously very profoundly influenced by certain rather philosophical ideas. I mean, Tolstoy appends to his novel War and Peace a great long epilogue in which he explains that in this novel he's been trying to express a certain philosophy of history. Or if you take another famous Russian novelist, Dostoevsky, he's often described by existentialists as the greatest of all existentialist writers because he's involved in certain kinds of problem that they themselves are also concerned with. Or one can think of a very large number of examples, can't one? I mean, it's obvious that Proust in À la recherche du temps perdu is deeply concerned with problems about time, which is also one of the traditional problems that philosophers have been concerned with, and so on. What I would like to get at in the form of a question to you is, what sort of role do you think that philosophy can play in literature? Let us take novels, for example.
Well, I think it had better keep out on the whole. I think that people say these things about writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky in order to have something interesting to say about them, as it were. I mean, obviously, writers are influenced by the climate of ideas of their time, and they're likely to be educated people who know a little bit about philosophical change and so forth. But the amount of philosophy they succeed in expressing in the book is very small, really. I think as soon as philosophy gets into a novel, work of literature, it ceases to be philosophy. It becomes something else. It becomes a plaything of the writer, and quite rightly. I mean, a pure novel of ideas. I mean, I don't know that it's very likely that it will. The harder the writer works to present his ideas, the less good his work of art is likely to become. I think it's a very dangerous activity. I think that, again, you see the great 19th century writers get away with quite a lot of idea play in their writings, but if you look at it, you couldn't possibly regard it as philosophy. It's idea play.
Well, I wonder if I agree with you. I mean, you say that people say this kind of thing about philosophers in order to have something interesting to say. Well, no doubt there is a lot of pseudo-talk about novels of this kind. But I did mention, for example, that Tolstoy himself says in War and Peace that this is one of the things he's trying to do. Or take a major English novel like Lawrence Sterne's Tristram Shandy. I mean, not only was that directly influenced by Locke's theories about the association of ideas, but there's quite a bit about that in the novel, and in terms which obviously refer to the novel itself. In other words, Sterne was quite clearly doing something which he himself related to Locke's theory of the association of ideas. So I think there are, in fact, a number of instances of great novels, I mean, really outstanding novels, where the use of philosophical ideas is part of the structure, is part of what it's about.
Yes, all right. Yes, perhaps it's just that I feel in myself such an absolute horror of putting theories as such into a book. I mean, certain philosophical ideas might... I perhaps put things about philosophy into my novels because I happen to know about philosophy. I mean, if I knew about sailing ships, I'd put sailing ships in. If I knew about hospitals, I'd put hospitals in. And in a way, as a novelist, I'd rather know about sailing ships and hospitals than about philosophy. But I don't think that, the writer necessarily knows...
in fact, you think it's just material?
Well, I think, Tolstoy says this, but I don't. Why should we attend to him? We read his books, don't trust the writer, trust the tale. One has to see what he's actually achieved. And I think that, I mean, I can only think of one really good philosophical novel, which is Sartre's La Nausée, which I do admire very much, which might be said to be a philosophical novel, which is demonstrating something about contingency. It's, interestingly, it's a philosophical subject which is very close to the novelist's art. I mean, there's a kind of a good marriage there, as it were, between the novelist's art and the subject.
Well, let's take that, shall we? Jean-Paul Sartre's La Nausée. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a magnificent book, but surely it also articulates a philosophical theory. In fact, my introduction to existentialism, so to speak, was reading that novel, and I thought that novel actually expressed an existentialist view, and it's rather marvellous. I mean, in the form of a work of fiction. It may well be, as you say, unique, but the fact that it exists at all shows that it can be done, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. You seem to be driving me to say something.
I'm
not to say.
Yes, I think there's a genuine difference of opinion between you and me, Iris,
yes.
which we simply may not be able to resolve in this discussion. But you, it seems to me, are trying to say that philosophy as such has no place in imaginative writing, except insofar as it can simply be material, like anything else can be material. Whereas I think I want to say that there are really a number of exceptions to this, and that some major novels do make use of philosophical ideas, not just as material in that sense, but in ways which inform the book.
Yes, I mean, this is perhaps just a matter of degree. Obviously, there are things to do with the ideas current at the time, climate of ideas and so on, which give a certain flavour to novels written at a certain time, and incidentally, which make it possible to write in one way at one time and impossible to write in that way at another time. But I think, one speaking rather loosely, I think existentialism may be something of a special case here, because it is a rather literary philosophy. It emphasises all sorts of things to do with the human predicament. And Sartre's marvellous philosophical work, L'Être et le Néant, is sort of full of pictures and conversations, as it were. It's true of Hegel, too, actually, that there's an awful lot of amusement and literary stuff, as it were, in both Hegel and in Sartre. And this is interesting. This has something to do with the rather dramatic form of the thought in the philosophy itself, that there's some kind of drama which can be exhibited. There's some kind of feeling about the world which belongs both to the philosophy and to the novel. But one can see that it's not easy from looking at other works by Sartre and by Simone de Beauvoir, where as soon as the existentialist voice comes in, the work of art is rigidified. Yes, I think it was just a lucky chance that he managed to pull it off in La Nausée.
Yes. Well, I think given what you've now just said, I think perhaps we're not so far apart as I thought.